Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahi Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Satanmayo Hi Amrita Isha Samstud Jnana Sadvago Bhuvan Sasya Gupta Ya Ishe Asya Jagato Nityam Eva Nanyo Hitur Vidyati Ishanaya. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May our study be full of vigor and enthusiasm. May we gain strength from this. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Becoming that, immortal, existing as the Lord, the knower, the omnipresent, guardian of this world, is he who rules this world forever, for no other cause is found for the ruling. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So this is the Vedanta Series question and answer. There are no questions, there are no answers, so pause a while for you to gather your thoughts and ask a question.
So, in the light of Advaita Vedanta, do we have free will, or we already born with a certain destiny and we can't change it at all?
Okay, thank you. All right. So there might be another question that might link in with that, so I'll take another question also.
Nobody has more questions. I just add one more thing. So a friend, a yoga student, he told me, so if only Brahman is real and everything else is Maya, an illusion, so this is a disinterest for life, it's a bitterness for life. I cannot live with it. I don't know if I explain it very well, but if I'm Maya and everything around me is Maya and only Brahman is real, so how can I live? It's a disinterest for life.
Okay. Okay, thank you, thank you.
Swamiji?
Yes.
On your speech on Tuesday, was it, or Monday to the group in Edinburgh, you were talking about apparitional causation. Is that Maya, Swamiji?
Okay, thank you. So the two questions link together actually, because if there's a non-dualistic aspect to things, I have to explain what that means. Then it means, of course, that nothing else exists apart from that. So I have to clarify some terms about non-dualism, Advaita, and the whole idea of Vivarta as an approach. So all of these questions are linked. Therefore, the answers are also linked. My grandfather was a very wise man. My grandfather said to me on more than one occasion, never believe what you hear and only half believe what you see. And so that level of doubt serves us well sometimes. You see, the whole of the ancient system was dependent on the body of work that we call the Vedas. And so what is real Hinduism is actually Vedanta. But there are different approaches within it, and it is an umbrella term for a whole wide range of approaches. Why is that? It's because our experience is different. And so there is the highest conclusion of the Vedanta is the Advaita or non-dualistic philosophy. Now, this is not monism. This is often misunderstood. Monism means there's only one thing. Yes, that's true. But in enumerating one, what you have done really is to create a dividedness, a restriction, with the implication that there is a 2 or a 3 or a 4 or 5. So we have selected these terms, or the philosophers accepted these terms of non-dualism, that there is no other. There is no other. Is that our experience? No, it's not our experience. Our experience is that of dividedness. And this term for the dividedness is called Maya. Now, many of the critics of the system have dismissed this and said, oh, these people, they just think that this whole world is just an illusion and that we're all deluded. But this is not exactly accurate at all, because this world that we're in, which we can designate as Maya, and also how does this term arise? Maya originally meant that kind of thing, an illusion. It also meant Indra's magic. And Swami Vivekananda himself points out the origins of these terms. But later, from a philosophical point of view, it came to mean just brute fact. The fact of a paradox. We are all sitting here knowing somehow, just academically, that we won't be sitting here for long. Sitting here means we were born at one moment in time. We'll go on. But there are several factors. 3 factors are there from a physical point of view. These factors are called Desha, Kala, Nimitta. Space, time, and causation. And that is how we know things exist. If you take it to a more psychological level, a more subtle level, you simply say Nama Rupa. Our dividedness is categorized as something that identifies an individuality, a separateness of something, so that there is a form to it. But we also have to acknowledge a subtle form is also there. When I say elephant, well, there's no elephant in the room I'm sitting in, but immediately we form a picture of an elephant. And those people who believe that all ideas are formed from a physical brain will be hard-pressed to answer the question, how did an elephant fit into your head? So all of these approaches will tell us that there is a form which changes, and then there's a subtle variation of that, a concept of it that remains. We don't have to be physically present with an elephant or vice versa for the image of an elephant to form in what we call the mind, in a subtle area that we can't physically access. So this all comes under the heading of Maya. Maya, the fact that we're all sitting here, knowing academically that we'll be here for a moment, and then not paying any attention to it, and behaving as if we will live forever. In this particular form, with this particular identity, Namarupa. That the framework of time and space and causation is a lasting one. And then the question arises, what happens when time and space does not allow this physical body to live anymore? What then? So the approach is time-bound and space-bound. And I have met people who are persuaded by the non-dualistic philosophy of Advaita, dismissing everything in that same way to say, it's all an illusion. And then the next question arises, how can we proceed with such a thing? There's no practicality in it. You try and eat your breakfast. Well, it's an illusory breakfast, fed into an illusory body, and it doesn't exist. But yes, it exists. So the Upanishads will declare that this Maya is existent and non-existent. You can't say that it is non-existent, because if there are no two, and that one that exists outside of time and space and causation, then everything else must be along with that. So therefore, you cannot say that this Maya, this world of experience, is non-existent. That means that whatever we deem to be existent is also non-existent. And nor can you say that it is existent, because it changes, it's divided. And we can register this change over a perception of time, which from a science point of view does not really exist. So it is both existent and non-existent. And the most famous example for that we use is a superimposition on something. And the illustration goes like this: in the twilight of the day, when we can't fully see properly, we go out and we see something coiled up in the garden, and we jump to a conclusion. Actually, this is a kind of a wave that the yogis call a verbal delusion, that we jump to a certain conclusion with internal language and superimpose something on something else, which is not really true, but which is partially true, because it comes within our realm of experience, and our realm of experience comes from our memory. Something coiled up in the twilight of the day, and we say it is a snake. Let us say it's a cobra. Or maybe we can say, if you're in America, a rattlesnake. So the hemp strands stand at one end and something else stands on the other, something like a rattle. It's coiled up. But then you see what has happened. When we take a lantern or a torch and investigate properly, what is this? Properly means with astute attention, with clarification, with mindfulness, with concentration, with the light of knowledge, seeing things as they are, not as we want them to be, or we have experienced things to be from our idealism or our memory, and there we discover it's a snake coiled up. Not a snake coiled up, sorry, a rope coiled up. So what happened? Three things happened in this phenomena. One is, in the phenomenal world, we superimpose something that resembled what was there. In this case, it's a snake. What was there was a rope. What condition was it in? Coiled up. Coiled up is another way of saying potential. If you take a small hair from the upper cheek, divide it into 1,000 pieces, take one small piece, put it under the electron microscope, analyze the nucleus of the cell, you'll find there a structure like the winged snakes of Mercury there, DNA, something coiled up. And the yogis have said, all of this is coiled up. Your whole potential is coiled up. All potential energy accessible to you is all coiled up, waiting to be unfolded. This aspect of unfoldment then tells us that what we call evolution is not actual. Now, the Sankhya philosophers, Jains and others, and some of these adherents to the Advaita, the non-dualistic system, have said, what we have is evolution. The Sankhyas and yogis in particular think that this world is self-caused and evolves by itself. It's an evolution. But evolution means unfolding. Unfolding of what? Unfolding of nature itself. Now, we don't disagree with anybody, because the synthesis of all these ideas comes under a beautiful, beautiful concept that Swami Vivekananda puts forward, that we don't go from error to truth, we go from truth to higher truth. All we do then is insert one small word. We call this vivarta. This vivarta means appearance. It appears to be like that. Yes, it appears to be evolving. If I'm in a fun mood and people ask me from a materialist point of view, do you believe in evolution? I say, no, I believe in totality. Because totality doesn't diminish, doesn't expand, doesn't change. Purnamadam, Purnamida, that prayer, this is full, that is full. You know, that you cannot add anything to fullness. You can't take anything away. So if you view things in a total way like that, that is an undivided way. It doesn't change. There's no evolution in it. So from that point of view, it only seems to be like it because we are dimensionally deficient. We're only looking at a small area, a small microscopic portion of what is actually there. This looking at it and interpreting it is called Maya. Seeing the apparition as something that is real. And what it prevents us from seeing is because in this example of rope and snake, the rope is hidden from us. The snake is projected from us. But that same Maya gives us the capacity to walk with it and step by step. First step is get a light. The mind itself can serve as that light. Even in a preliminary way, somebody may give you the light. This is called a guru. And throughout human history, we find extraordinary lights arriving, such as a Ramakrishna, such as a Buddha, such as a Jesus, such as a Krishna, Rama. All these great entities that have literally descended and have impacted us in an appropriate way for the appropriate time, for that era, and their impact lasted thousands and thousands of years. Like kicking a football up, and eventually it comes down, another impetus has to be given. So these entities act like a catalyst. So they act as a beacon light with the capacity to alight other lights, other lamps. We take such a lamp, we take the wisdom from scripture, that is the light of others who have received revelation, and have it recorded and documented in some way for posterity. Then we actually take the steps. These steps are called yoga. We take these steps, we have to do something. Standing there and looking at it from afar won't work. But we have a natural ability to move towards something and investigate it properly. As soon as we find a dividedness, the first thing that happens is we have fear. As soon as we assume there's a snake there, the first thing is fear. Second, fallout from it will be misery. With these two things, fear and misery, we're walking through the world, even though somebody may have told us in a book or from a high, lofty position of a platform, my dear, there's nothing else that exists, it's only Brahman exists, only that supreme principle, indescribable, undivided, no access to it in any normal way. It requires us to verify that for ourselves, taking that principle and then from there, creating some steps toward a discovery of it. In the example, we'll walk close enough so that the beam of light can show what is that coiled up in the corner. And then great relief. Great relief is when I see it is a harmless rope coiled up and it doesn't move. Now, all examples are inadequate. It doesn't fully describe the indescribable, but it's adequate enough for our intellectual understanding. So this self-discovery, this discovery of what is actually there, has two effects. Fear goes away. We are no longer afraid about an imaginary snake. And the second thing that goes away is misery. That's the practical aspect of this. But how do we view it from other perspectives? More practical. More practical means within the scope of our actual experience. Theory is one thing. Fear and misery are both emotional traits. And so they have their opposites in courage. Courage, faith. And the opposite of misery will be joy and bliss and happiness. there is a great purpose to this misery, apart from anything else. The other day we celebrated the birth of Swami Vivekananda, the Titi Puja of Swami Vivekananda. And it occurred to me that during his wanderings, he felt all his compassion when he saw his countrymen, countrywomen, when he saw the people of India in such dire conditions, uneducated, in rags, impoverished, starving, begging, under the rule of a regime that should have done something better for them. But you see, that compassion, I think, didn't start there. Because Swami Vivekananda was born in a relatively prosperous family, well-to-do family. His ancestral home can be visited today, has been renovated. But you see, that all went away. When his father passed away, Naran was lost because his father left a lot of debt. And he registers this period of time as the worst moment, the most depressing moment of his entire life. Imagine. Because not only was there physical impoverishment, where he himself had to go without food, but looking desperately for a job, doors were slammed in his face. A confident young man, not used to any of that. Not used to starvation, not used to poverty. And he went around barefoot. And even his friends, who never understood his condition, would ignore him. So he faced rejection, not only from employers, going from door to door, not getting anything. He faced starvation. More than that, what about his family? He had to provide food for his family. So there was some element of an internal urgency there, which was concerning, full of anxiety. And then the psychological aspect of him, a born leader, being rejected by the very people who were his friends. On top of that, people piled scandal after scandal on him in an unwarranted way. That came to the ears of Ramakrishna, his master. And he was the only one who stood by Naran. Blocked his ears, I won't listen to that. You don't know the nature of Naran. Now, without that suffering, how could he be compassionate? Because compassion requires us to have empathy, to stand in the other person's shoes, to wear the other person's moccasins. Use the expression moccasins because it's a very thin layer on the foot. It protects you from some light thorns, but still you'll feel every pebble, every rock. So empathy means I can feel what you're feeling. But if I've not experienced what you're feeling, then what will I say? You know, like many monks and like many psychologists and so on and so forth, bereavement is a big area that requires counseling. Because it's the greatest shock. The greatest mother of all fear is really the fear of death. It's equivalent in the example of the snake and the rope. The greatest fear is the demise of the snake. And that's what really makes it some kind of illusion in a sense. But in dealing with the question of grief, and the whole of the Upanishads and the whole of Bhagavad Gita is centered around this goal of removing grief. In order for us to remove grief, you'll find people who are bereaved, who have, we say, lost somebody. Those people who haven't had that experience don't know what to say. They're confronted with an awkward pause. And those people who are bereaved, if they're understanding, will excuse them. Look, I know you don't know anything about what I'm going through. So that's all right. You can be polite. You can be sympathetic, but you cannot be empathetic. You cannot know what I'm feeling. You cannot feel what I'm feeling unless you have been through the same trauma. And so Swami Vivekananda had been through that trauma, and naturally his heart opened up when he saw the condition of his own countrymen. It's a very natural response that he had. Now we can ask, was he under the spell of Maya? And you see, the Advaita point of view will lead us to a point of perfection when we realize that there is only this one entity, one without a second. And when we realize the ephemeral nature of this world, not only that, but to see it as an apparitional extension, as it were. The snake in the rope, when we're able to see it, then the whole of the point of view changes. And then we see that perfection everywhere. And that is the non-dualistic basis for social upliftment, for expressing compassion. We see things in the correct context. So we are seeing both. And it cannot be dismissed as a mere illusion in way of criticism. This I've heard from many, for example, Christian missionaries who say, you know, those Buddhists and Hindus, they think that everything is just an illusion. What a funny thing. They have no compassion for anybody. And in a sense, it's true. We have this saying, familiarity breeds contempt. So supposing you're in a country or in a continent where I come from, Africa, or India or South America, or any of these areas where there's impoverishment. And I take also a highlight currently the condition of Yemen as well. Because Yemen, you hardly hear anything in the news about it. And yet, probably the worst crisis in human history in terms of famine. That in Eritrea currently. But because we're not living there or close to there, we brush it off. But if we're in the midst of it, let's say, for example, in Africa, where you go into a village or a town, you stop your car, immediately you're surrounded by children. These are orphans, very often AIDS or orphans. It gives you a shock the first day if you're not used to it. Second day, a little less. Third day, by the fourth day, it becomes part of the landscape. I pick up this term actually because looking at current affairs and recognizing the effect of COVID virus in terms of being restricted, activities being restricted and not having the capacity to reach out to the poor. He gives an example. A policeman in Rome had said, when I say he, I mean Pope Francis. Pope Francis is what I read this morning. And so he gives the example of a policeman in Rome who sees a person violating the curfew that COVID has brought about. And he says, please go home. He says, that's all very well. I have no home. My home is the street. Where you find me, that's my home. And this must have moved this current Pope Francis to use this expression, we have to be sure that these people have not become part of our landscape. I thought it was a beautiful term to use. And so being far removed from it, not connected with it, our compassion goes. But if we apply the practical aspect of this non-dualistic philosophy, we can't just dismiss it as mere illusion. We can see that whatever is there is a real extension of this one entity, apparently. We have to put the word apparently in. And so, yes, on the one side, we are dealing with an apparitional universe. But you see, if I see some oasis in the distance, that is a mirage, and I'm convinced that it is real, and I start walking toward it. As soon as I realize it is only a mirage and it disappears, the next time I see it, I won't be deluded, but I will see it nonetheless. and I will have to deal with it. Not from an impersonal way, but from a positive point of view. That if I see what is in front of me, I can use my creative imagination, part of the Maya system, instead of projecting something that I'm fearful of. I can now systematically see that this is the same entity. This is pure and full and perfect and free, but the external condition is presented to me so that I can deal with this from an empathetic level. On that level, I can deal with it. Then on another level, I can see the connectedness. And on another level, I can see only that one being. That means I have the opportunity when practicing Vedanta, I have the facility, I have the ease, I have the swiftness of foot to be able to shift my position appropriately, but always understanding the apparitional nature of what is there in front. There are two opposites, therefore, in our viewing. One is to say that there is a creator and a creation, a dualistic position, and to emphasize that aspect of it. We can do this without God and religion. We can do this by atheistic ethics. We can just say, for an unknown reason, we should have ethical behavior. If we want to analyze it and theorize about it, we can say part of the social conditioning or whatever it is. We can put it into the category of biological evolution if we wish. But that doesn't really get us anywhere forward. That doesn't assist our own spiritual evolutionary process, which culminates in this aspect, in this understanding of this oneness. The non-dualistic ethics convinces us that there's a unity, so that whatever harm we do to another, we do precisely to ourselves. Whatever good do we do to another, precisely to ourselves. Whatever we love is precisely love to ourselves. You know, this is psychological modern speak. You need to love yourself. But what do we mean by that? You look into a mirror and you say, I need to love myself. And some psychological techniques would tell you, see, stand in front of a mirror, look at the image, and tell the image how beautiful you are, how beautiful your body is, and so on. Of course, it helps if your mirror lies, you know, but you ignore all the flaws and you say, this is self-worth. Self-worth equals physical worth and psychological worth, but that has no meaning. The real root for self-worth and self-faith will be to understand your own pristine nature that stands there, not as split phenomenon and noumenon, not in the idealistic sense, but in a non-dual sense, in an Advaitic sense that says there is only one existence, and this one existence I can contact. And when I contact it through the various methods, be it from love of God, be it from the point of view, because in this Advaitic context, of course, God is also part of this phenomena. But yet, we can't say it's unreal because the whole of Maya is neither existent nor non-existent. It's just a fact. Or we can do it through using the hands, offering every activity Godwards. We can make a combination of karma and bhakti, devotion and selfless action. Or we can say just mindful action. Concentration itself will have a clarifying effect, will serve to operate a beam of light toward the truth. Or by discernment, a heroic avenue requiring a keen intellect, requiring dedication of practice that is able to sort out what is the phenomena, what is the noumenon, what is the thing that lasts, what is the thing that is fleeting. And to then see this whole apparent manifestation, as it were, within the framework of space and time and causation as some huge operating system which represents a totality, to see the totality and then see that that is an entity that is flowing through multiple arms and eyes and heads and hands, or through meditation, through sitting and through taking off layer after layer after layer after layer until I discover that one without a second. Whether I'm theistic, atheistic, I can do that process. An all-encompassing process is the practice of the Vedanta that we call yoga. And so by doing these things, reaching gradually toward the ideal of perfection, we can realize that non-dual state. And then on the other side, the illusion, as it were, or the apparition, more accurate term, has then been found out. So that when I see the coiled up thing that I formerly superimposed a snake on, I now am wary and I say, no, don't worry. And I can tell others, you see that thing coiled up? You think it's a snake? No, I can tell you it's a rope. Still, they won't believe you until you shine the light there. And then they come in advance and say, oh yes, this is true. I understand what you mean. Now the coiled up thing, that which is there, in the example called a rope, is a coiled up thing, and a rope has certain dimensions. Every example is inadequate because that supreme entity, that one without a second, does not have any qualities, does not have any attributes, does not have any length or breadth or height or thickness. It's not made of different strands of things. It has no parts, and it doesn't move. No change in evolutionary process. It is a sum totality. It is all there is in the non-dualistic system. The fact is, we didn't mistake a chair. We didn't say that the snake, when you remove this projection, is a chair. There must be something that resembles what we see. And so to find out this, we have to look for the clues. Where are the elements of rope that we see in the snake? Where is the length, the breadth, the height, and so on? Of course, we're using an example. So we have to look in the universe to see it. First thing, obviously, to us is that there is a great deal of intelligence that we are using to discuss these things or to get our head around various abstract concepts. Where is this intelligence coming from? And since the law of nature is constant, we can't say it came from thin air. We can't say it came by mistake. The mistake is registering this world as permanent. That's our mistake. So when we talk about science and scientific investigation, what are we investigating? We're investigating the equivalent of the snake and looking for the clues. If we want to go further into metaphysics and mysticism to find out actually what actually is there, then we have to look for the clues, the strands. And these strands are threefold. These strands are called Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. That is a place where there is a sense of undividedness or a will to be undivided. All of us want a unity. Why is it? So from a willing point of view, we have a sense of it as a goal. From a social point of view, we all want a United Nations. From a physics point of view, we all want a theory of everything. We want a united theory that will be the mother of all the disparate physics theories. Basically twofold: the quantum world and the world of general relativity, the great cosmos and the tiny, tiny, indescribable, vague world of fields, of energies. And two apparently obeying different principles, different laws, different aspects of physics have to be applied. So this is concerning, this is worrying. Now let us see that this Maya, or this subject of scientific investigation, which is neither existent nor non-existent, which is inscrutable, will science ever know it? If it's inscrutable, if it's true that it's inscrutable, they'll never know it. But if you want to know the basis of it, then you have to go where science has gone to the border, and then you have to go further in a non-scientific way. Non-scientific, not according to methodology. Methodology will be the same or similar, but in a different direction, a new way of investigation. Essentially, this new way of investigation is meditation. Sitting there and going within as opposed to without. The Katha Upanishad tells us that generally we are looking outward. That entity pierced the openings, as it were, and produced the phenomena that we see. But one wise person decided, let me do it the other way around. Let me go inward. When you go inward, then he discovered something. And that basis, he also discovered, is the basis of removing grief. We can't grieve, we can't fear. When there are no two, there's no second to fear. There's no second to doubt. There's no second to be tempted by. There's no struggle about it. There's no good, there's no evil. There are no pairs of opposites. And so that is a fully ideal position where we register in practice, directly, empirically, a totality, a oneness. No one can describe a oneness. As soon as you try to describe such a thing, you've now made a duality, you've made a multiplicity, you've made something else, you've now made a division. And so this is revealed by itself. So this is one strand, this process, which is encouraging, cultivating sattva. We find this as a clue. We find that the clues towards sattva, the urge for undividedness. But then we find the equal urge for dividedness. This we can classify as rajas. If you want it in physical terms, gravity wants to unite everything. But electrical energy wants to disperse everything. And because of this tug of war, so to speak, we have what we have. And then we find things don't want to move. Psychologically, we can see how things come as laziness, lack of interest, dullness, sleepiness. It is useful. We have to sleep. Sleep is an opportunity for the entity that remains awake to repair all the cells of the body, to solve problems in the unconscious area, to repair things, to give us rest and renewal, a way of energizing us physically, and also a way during sleep, that is during dream, of a rapid movement of all the human biological process, giving us a surge of renewed energy. What a wonderful system it is. So that when we wake up, so-called, in the morning, we can now start asking these questions and hopefully understanding some answers. There is a number of wonderful lectures that Swami Vivekananda gives on the whole question of Maya. In fact, there are 3 whole chapters in the complete work and more on the subject of Maya. And he spends a certain attention on it when he's discussing overall the Vedanta philosophy. It's worthwhile reading what he has to say. He says, according to the Advaita philosophy, then, this differentiation of matter, these phenomena are, as it were, for a time, hiding the real nature of man. But the latter really has not been changed at all. In the lowest worm, as well as in the highest human being, the same divine nature is present. The worm form is the lower form in which the divinity has been overshadowed by Maya. That is the highest form in which it has been least overshadowed. And behind everything, the same divinity is existing. And out of this comes the basis of morality. Do not injure another. Love everyone as your own self. Become the whole universe, because the whole universe is one. In injuring another, I'm injuring myself. In loving another, I'm loving myself. And from this also springs that principle of Advaita, non-duality, morality which has been summed up in one word, self-abnegation. Self-abnegation, another way of saying, removing the sense of or the image of I. I am this, I am that. And removing the pride that comes with it and the mistake that comes with it, and therefore the misery that comes with it. In the dualistic system of the yoga philosophy, this egoism is one of a number of kleshas, obstacles. But the mother of all the obstacles is the mistake, ignorance. So that even in this dualistic system, it's acknowledged that we have no access, normally speaking, to this entity that remains. So the last chapter of Patanjali Yoga Sutras is called to do with kaivalya, isolation, independence. We're having taken away all the various mistaken identities. One identity alone remains. The language of the yogis puts it as Purusha. The Vedantic language puts it as Atman, self. Purusha, meaning that occupier of a city which has no boundaries, which pervades everywhere. So, Sri Ramakrishna gives a wonderful example because and I put this yesterday, I think it was, in a thought, that there are a number of pots available to us filled with water, and each one, the sun will reflect. Because we add to it by way of explanation, because we are dimensionally deficient and we don't bother to take our inspiration to a higher level. In other words, if we were to look at the sun, we'd realize the Maya, we'd realize the mistake, we'd realize the illusion and the apparition. But we take all these different suns, let's say 6 pots, 6 suns in each one, and we wonder what will happen. What is the real sun? Let's try to investigate. What is the thing that remains when we remove all this nama rupa? When we take away this desha, kala, nimitta, what happens? So we take one part away, let's say 6 parts, 5 remaining. You take another one away, 4 remaining. Like that, we take each one. You take the final part away, and we realize, that there must be a sun. Where is it? All the others were just reflections. So this is a significant, a beautiful example given, an example that anybody can understand. You know, a lot of people say, I didn't attend your talk. Okay, that's fine, I don't mind. But why not? Because I can't understand this Vedanta. It's a very complex philosophy. I'm not clever enough. Another way of saying I'm lazy. But you see, this non-dualism aspect, this whole of Vedanta, Swami Vivekananda said, we should be able to teach it even to a child. We should broadcast it with missionary fervor as a religion of the future everywhere, as the panacea for all difficulties. And so that even a child can understand it. Now, the Vedanta principles, from a non-dualistic point of view, are very simple. There's only one existence. Brahman alone exists. And even the word Brahman, there's no real definite shape to it. It's coming from a root bra, the thing that is seen to expand infinitely. So that's the Brahman. The Atman, that is that self that the yogis are calling Purusha, is one with that. And thirdly, all of this with a broad stroke of the hands, that means everything in front, this whole phenomenal universe of our experience, be it on the domestic front or the social front, be it on the political front even, or the national front. All of these divisions, even if it's the site of a separate table and chair, all of this is mithya. All of this will come and will go, is transient. There's no permanence for it. But more than that, that's a negation. In the same way, we have to negate that aspect, that part that we call self. Small self, physical self, emotional self, intellectual self, self-image. All that has to go. So after the ignorance, Patanjali then puts the next klesha. And that is this ego, the sense of aham. This ahamkara, the sense of I. Essentially, the central rallying point for the mind. And from this, other kleshas are coming, obstacles are coming. Supposing we get right to the head and remove the primary obstacle from which all the others are coming, namely this mistaken view of life, which we call this ignorance, lack of knowledge, avidya. So we have come to a conclusion now that on the negative side, it is avidya, it is maya. But on the positive side, Vedanta supplements it. So on the positive side, it is Brahman. It is the only existence which is there. On the positive side, you are one with it. Fundamentally one with it. But when you take all these parts away, physical part, how is it that the eyes shine, that the speech is facilitated? How is it that there's breathing? How is it that there is a certain willing? It comes back to the original question, is there free will? So free will. From a non-dualistic position, there's no will. But from the dualistic position, or the associated dualistic position, that is the quasi-dualistic position called Vishishtadvaita, which is where we are practically operating from for the most part. From that point of view, we have to have free will. But free will is an appearance. The mind is an appearance from the non-dualistic point of view. What we see as an objective universe is an appearance. It's only looking like that. It is the Lord's magic show. And therefore we also hook this word Lila Maya, because what other reason can there be for this world to exist except that it is a play? It's a play fundamentally of waves. A play of waves and oscillations and appearances and disappearances. And we can see this very clearly the more we study to find out what is the nature of this mistake called science. When you look at things closely, it is not tables and chairs. It only tables and chairs related to the eyes, relative to the eyes. But if you take even this appearance of free will away, this appearance of separateness away, then you have no morality. You cannot make moral decisions. You cannot decide whether this is a path which will be of use to us. In the Kathopanishad described as, and the Bhagavad Gita described as, the path which is preferable to us, and then the path which is pleasurable to us. Prayas, Shreyas, these two terms are there. What is preferable, that is what is immediately not gratifying, but what gives us deeper gratification, what gives us a gratification that is nothing to do with a subject-object. It is like saying, let me experience the wonderful depths of the water of the ocean without fear, because I am that. But if you think you are separate, there's provision for that also. You can say, I'm a wave. But then you can't leave it at that. You can't assume that the wave can raise a flag and say, I'm completely separate and will make war with all the other waves. Because the essential nature of the wave itself is water. The wave is water. The wave is the ocean. The ocean is not the wave. The ocean can be the wave, yes. But when the wave diminishes, still the ocean is there. So we have to take this non-dualism to a practical level. We have to apply the free will. Even if you say it's apparitional free will, don't dismiss it. When you dismiss it, what practical application are you going to use in order to discover directly, empirically, this non-dual nature? So we have to take the light of knowledge to remove the ignorance. But the light of knowledge is also just part and parcel of the illusion. When the illusion, as it were, is removed, or the appearance is removed, then we can still operate as we normally operate, but with a renewed understanding and knowledge. And we still have to apply all the phenomena which is there. Let's not just select will, let's select other things. Somebody tells me that there's a non-duality. The inference of that on the other side is, this whole world is mithya, or vivarta, just an appearance. Will I stop eating? Will I stop drinking? Will I stop exercise? Will I stop meditation? Will I stop any philanthropic work out of compassion to my fellow human? Even as Swami Purnananda says, a worm has this potentiality of divinity. Will I stop all of those things? Oh, you didn't eat today, why? Non-dualism. You can't do it. So we have to arrive at this conclusion step by step. Having posted it as the only logical reality, we then have to take our other tool, namely duality, worship of God in the primary stages. All that we have to take. So there is a mistake, and we're investigating the mistake and living in the mistake. But spiritual practice is a sincere and systematic attempt to remove that by opening up the knowledge which is there, the reality which is there. And the more the mind gets clarified, because the mind itself is the divider. It is the mind itself that acts as a prism to take this undividedness and fragment it seemingly everywhere. You see how I can insert the term seemingly? So we have to work on a practical level in order to do this, and therefore practically employ all the instrumentation that we have. Not only the outer instrument, but the antahakarana, the inner instrument too, which is called the mind. It is principally through the mind that the illusion takes place, or the apparition takes place. It is also through the mind that it's revealed, and then all aspects then are discarded, automatically discarded, because the world falls away by itself. Just as the illusion falls away by itself when I realize that the shimmering thing I see in the distance is nothing but a mirage. So now it is 12 o'clock, past 12. So I hope that has clarified something for you.
Yes, for me it's difficult to understand this free will. Okay, we have this free will, but because everything is appearance, so we have it and we don't have it. For me, it's difficult to understand. For one side, I understand it, but for other, no.
Well, if you understand it, that's the main thing. You don't really care. You have enough to deal with beyond, without going beyond ourselves. So the whole idea of freedom and will are contradictory terms. This is what Swami Vivekananda has to say in dealing with this subject. Because if you will to do something, there's a preceding something there. And so that is not the ultimate position. But there is a free area that is this non-dual area. And then there is this relative area where we have to apply the will in order to understand the freedom that we have. And so this free will is applied by deciding to do the correct thing, the right thing, the clarifying thing, the purifying thing. This is called spiritual practice. And the purification of the faculty of will that the Sankhya philosophers call buddhi, that is a discriminating faculty, the willing faculty that exercises our choice, that has to be purified. And that is why somebody who has attained, as it were, this purification is called a Buddha, somebody of enlightened intellect. And so you see there are no contradictory positions. There are seeming contradictory positions. Is it true that in the example of the snake and the rope, that there was a snake there for the time being without the enlightenment of it? Yes, there was a snake there. Was I frightened? I was fearful, yes. Did I run away? I ran away. Or the alternative, did I confront? I confronted it. Or did I stand there mesmerized? I did. But did I love the truth enough to expose it, to find out what is actually there? And I can only do that by determining that I take measures. So my willing faculty decided that I would then find a means to reveal what is it actually, knowing that I'm seeing this all in a twilight. An easy way of understanding it is the limitation that a calf has when tethered. This is Ramakrishna's example. When tethered to a post, we're given a long rope, it roams the entire field and thinks that it's free, but it's tethered. So we have this illusion that we are free in our current condition. But it's only an illusion, really, because we are tethered. Freedom only occurs when the tether is broken and 3 strands of this rope are laid out for us. And these are called the gunas. This is the sattva, rajas, and tamas. And when sattva then, through exercising will correctly, in a pure way, in a delightful way, in an intentional way, in a way that understands, even in principle, that it is a game or a play. And if we know it, then we have to play very well. In playing very well, the illusion is gone. So the example I typically give, I hate to repeat, but nevertheless, repetition is that it's like playing a part in a drama on a stage with cardboard scenery behind you. You know that it is not solid. You know it's not an actual wall. You know the bricks are painted on. And still you enact your scene, learn your lines. The learning of the lines comes from all our past experience. We have rehearsed this illusion very well. We've rehearsed the part very well. What part you're playing now is an accumulation of all the experiences in the past. And now you've come to this expert stage with big billboards Ophelia is now playing in this play on this stage. Let us come and see her. But that person never for a moment thinks that they are the part that they are playing. Suppose when you play the part of a heroine, an apt part that you might play, and knowing that if you're a heroine, there must be villains also. So your job is to combat all the villains. That's okay. You play your part very well. Other people play the part of a villain. There are many parts that people play. And Swami Vivekananda gives the example, one part is a worm even. Is there a worm coming on the stage? That's your part. There's no point in time where you think that you are the part that you're playing. Now, what is the difference? The difference is, in this example, there's no mistake. But in the part that we are playing, there is the mistake that we identify fully with the part. And that binds us. When we realize it is just an apparitional, it is a play, apparition on the negative side, play on the positive side. That is a play that we can fully engage in and spread the joy of it everywhere for the entertainment purposes. But what is it that's witnessing it in the audience? It is the witness which is you. All examples are not adequate. And when you then sit in the audience and witness the play going on, this is called a dream. And there's only one player because a non-dualistic dream. The non-dualistic aspect is playing all the parts on the stage and witnessing them. And then all the actors take their bow, take their leave, the scenery is removed, curtains opened, blank stage there, lights only, and there is no division there. But still there's a witness in the audience. And the witness in the audience is witnessing the absence of any division. And this is called deep sleep. Where does will operate? Only operates when you're playing the part. You want or will to say your lines correctly. You don't want to make any blunders. You don't want to destroy the plot of the play or the drama. You want to play your part very well. If you don't understand that, you will take the villains to be real and you'll form a combat zone. You'll take everything to be, you'll see the brick walls and you won't think they're cardboard. You'll think they are actual bricks. And if you put your head against it, knock your head there, you'll damage your head. So this drama is a drama. If we don't take it like this, fear arises, misery arises. When we understand it for what it is, with only this one difference in non-dualism, to say the whole thing can go away, just as it does in a dreamless sleep. The whole thing can go away. Then there's no witness. A witness is only there when there's something to witness. There's only that one without a second. And that we call the self, Atman. We can vary the term Brahman, but at the end of it, it is only that pure existence itself. And this consciousness itself. And this bliss. Why is it that we enjoy happiness? Why is it that we're looking for it? Why is it that we enjoy a sense of humor? Because our very nature is bliss. Why is it that we want to be extremely find out things? Why is it that we have such a thing called science? Why do we want to investigate? Why are we curious? If it's not because our nature is pure consciousness. Why are we self-aware? Why are we aware at all? It's because our nature is consciousness. And why do we not wish to cease to exist? It's because our nature is existence itself. These are the clues. These are the clues that what we see as the world around us has a semblance, an appearance of the thing that is there and appears as this world. As I say, in the example of a rope and a snake, it's not a chair that appears as a snake. is a rope that appears as a snake. When we look at the world, we'll find all the signatures of this entity that is at least this much existence itself. And that is why we say the world exists. That is why we begin our investigation not by inquiring, where is this entity called God? We start by inquiring, what is the nature of existence and reality? And so this creates a different approach, really, from other investigative approaches that starts off with a presumption, a top-down presumption. God exists, what next? Why would we take that for granted? The other way up, we come to the conclusion, God exists. And this is a very scientific kind of approach. Not taking anything for granted, except provisionally. What we have heard. You say, how many times in the Upanishads, this is what we heard from those. This is what we were told. See? Apart from the humility of it, of the sages coming out by attributing it to somebody else.
Thank you, Swamiji. Actually, I was more interested in, from memory, you mentioned apparitional causation in association with Ishtadevata, but maybe we don't have the time for that now. On another occasion, if you can elaborate on that, please, Swamiji.
Okay, I think I had done it, but just to clarify, therefore, you see, there are two types of causation. The causation that we're typically familiar with is transformational causation. Transformational causation means we don't get anything new. It's a conservation of energy and matter. If you light something in a fire and burn material, I get ash and smoke. When I add the whole thing together, I get a mass balance. Nothing was newly created. What was there was simply transformed. And all we're doing is measuring the transformations and we're putting them in a sequence. Now that sequence, from a physics point of view, is to do with going from a chaotic situation, from a simple situation to a chaotic situation, and is irreversible. So this is called entropy. Entropy means that it's a measure of scrambledness. If you take eggs and scramble them, you can't unscramble them. You will only go in the one direction. But eggs are eggs. So as a transformational causation, nothing changes. But how does this world arrive? It's an apparition. What is the cause? Apparitional causation. How did that arise? Well, the nature of it was hidden, and the signature of it, or the semblance of it, was projected. And that projection was there, the mind itself does it, was projected. And there's a capacity to reveal it also. You can do it with any magic show. A magician produces something seemingly from thin air, everybody is amazed, because they don't know what is the trick of it. Now, in this case, we know what is the trick of it. The truth of it was hidden. The apparition of it was projected. And the example there was there of the snake and the rope. A rope is there. That is existent entity is there. Its nature was hidden. And then this hiding element is called tamas, ignorance, a layer of unknowing. And what its appearance was projected. This is called rajas. Ultimately, when we encourage sattva, that is systematic spiritual practice, clarifying our vision, then we find the whole thing is revealed. It's not that the snake was there and we chased it. It's simply that knowledge revealed it. It was already there. Knowledge revealed it. That's all. Nothing extra was added. No transformational causation took place. So this is called vivarta. This is called apparitional causation. not actual causation. Now, when we deal with this world, there's a mistake that dualistic theists make, a natural mistake, thinking that there's a creator and a creation separate. And there's a mistake that science makes. They make the same mistake. They make the mistake that this is an actual universe. But our philosophy tells us, no, this is an apparitional universe. It is not an actual universe. And when you want to deal with it correctly, you cannot deal with it on an actual basis. There has to be a sidestep somewhere that gives us an answer and is practical enough to use as a tool when we require it. When we don't require it, we can have a dualism. We can make God separate. We can put ourselves in a position of a servant. If God is a regal entity, a cosmic king or queen, then we can make ourselves a servant. Supposing we want to be a child and have a child approach, then God can become mother or father or parent. So these are these various approaches in devotional life that we can use, and that is most appropriate for most people. But at some point in time, in our spiritual unfoldment, we realize the connectedness. And then after the connectedness, we realize the oneness. And that's a sequence that occurs. That makes these different philosophical approaches supplementary, not contradictory. This is the wonderful thing that the 19th century mystic Ramakrishna and his expressive mouthpiece Swami Vivekananda told us. But of course it was told before. The whole of the Bhagavad Gita is full of this reconciliation between Sankhya, between the Vedanta philosophy, between dualism, non-dualism, between Vishishtadvaita too. All of these things are reconciled, but we forget these and we require a renaissance that reminds us of it again. And so we are reminded of these approaches. We need not stick in a thoroughly Advaita point of view to say, we won't deal with the world since the world is simply illusion. Who told you it's an illusion? That's not how Maya is defined. Maya is defined as something that is inscrutable, something we will never understand because it is both existent and non-existent. But what is it? We know it is an appearance. It's not actual, because when we get to the actual, the appearance goes away by itself. And as long as we live in a state of dividedness, we can't really apply in a living, empirical way. We cannot apply the non-dualistic philosophy. It is only when we see the unity of it in a practical way that it becomes practical to us. And that is why we can see that Jiva, Shiva, and so on, that we can see that all these manifestations, all these appearances, all these parts being played, all of these are caused by apparitional causation. And playing the game very well will use the human faculties of emotion, of empathy, of compassion, and remove all of that. But at the back of our mind, we have the fullness which is already there. And at the back of our mind, at the back of all things, we understand that there is fullness and freedom and perfection standing there. And we can use the faculty, even the apparitional faculty of imagination and creativity. And when we do this in a positive way, it is the wave system called sattva. And the sattva will then reveal to us this inherent non-dualism. And on the other side will reveal the apparitional nature. This world is not caused by a creator going to a secondhand shop and creating something ex nihilo from nothing. This world is created, as it were, from apparitional factors, apparitional causation. So this is this apparitional causation by which this universe comes into existence. And all of the components, including your individual microcosm, your domestic environment, your personal environment, your career environment, your physical environment, your behavior environment. All of this is coming from apparitional causation. Now, when we understand that, we have a very different approach, a more beneficial approach to the so-called problems of life. Not dismissing them and saying they're unreal, but tackling them from the point of view of apparitional causation. And every problem in physics gets resolved by this, and every problem in your personal life gets resolved by this. That's the range. All right. So, all right, we finish off there. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.